already know we right here at work decided to hop on top of it with individuals. He was the talk of the town. Is going down the wind of the curve. You heard me. Here in Southern California, it is a hot day, but it's a beautiful day. Beautiful day to be enjoying yourself. Out and about. Just make sure to always be aware of your surroundings and keep a through chat for the chat. Now, I know I said yesterday I was going to do a battle rap reaction for my other channel. I actually did do it, but unfortunately, it got flagged by YouTube, right? So it got blocked. So unfortunately, people weren't able to view it because of the parties involved within the reaction. I guess I don't know if they didn't like my opinion or what was up, right? Even though I didn't say anything bad, right? Or maybe they just didn't like my choice of who I think won the battle, right? And maybe for that reason, I don't know. It doesn't say the reasons why, right? It just says that, it just gives you the party that filed the complaint and, had it blocked or whatever, right? And it had to be the owners of the music, right? Because it was somebody that was able to get the video, completely taken down, right? Which would be the owner of the music, or maybe the person that shot the video. I don't know, but somebody in that party, right? But it's cool, it happens. Not the first nor the last. Right, so hopefully I'm gonna try to do another one today, and hopefully that one gets uploaded, right? Hopefully that one could go through. It's not the first time that I experienced, this kind of, YouTube has already blocked and taken down several battle rap reactions. I want to say maybe like a total of like, I don't know, like 14 of them. It's crazy, but it's cool. The man, the myth, the legend. Shut up. What's cracking, like, and Lil Rich? What you getting yourself into, my boy? What's good, Eric? How you doing? Everything gravy on this Friday? How's your guys' Friday going? Yeah, but we are going to try to do that one, at least on the other channel, and actually try to get it out there. It's kind of hard really seeing like which rappers are cool and which ones are not. I get a pretty good idea though, and when people be like, oh, you see how the Northerners, it's not always the North, sometimes it's the rappers from the South. When, I don't know, maybe they don't like my opinions or whatnot, right? But some of them. Like, I really learned, reacting to Chito Rana's tracks, they'll probably get taken down. He tends to do that a lot. Well, at least all the songs I have reacted of his, right, have gotten, taken down. I don't know why. We just try to show them love, but. Oh, the homie Derek is definitely up in the building. What's good, my boy? What are your thoughts on these? 58-year-old senior complaining about getting pepper sprayed instead of taking to Bart. But why would a 58-year-old get pepper sprayed though? That's crazy. At that age, I figured that they wouldn't be getting themselves, involved in stuff that would get them to get pepper sprayed. Were they protesting at the rallies? Friday payday. Just posted on Saturday chilling, trying to have a good time. That's right, my boy, as you should. Just getting ready for it. That's right, to make the Skrilla. Do you listen to? I don't even know who that is, bro. So I guess that would be a no-no. Sometimes these rappers have egos and they can't take criticism. It's sad. Yeah, but sometimes like I don't even say nothing bad though, or maybe they just don't like maybe the outcome, of the battle. Like let's say if I think one song is better than the other, right? Which in all true reality, I always say that both tracks are good. I just find this one, a little bit better. It doesn't mean that this one sucks now or is like inferior. You know what I mean? But because sometimes I'll react to another track and they might take the W. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it's just my opinions, and who the fuck am I? So I don't understand why they get so bent out of shape for. It's like that's with music though. Not everyone's gonna like all your music. I don't like every Ice Cube or Tupac or Eazy-E song. You know what I mean? It all comes down to preference. Music is down to preference, bro. Some songs people will dig, some songs people won't dig. Others that didn't dig that song, other people might dig it. And other people that dig it, others might not. So it's just the way it is. I like your get down in history on neighborhoods, homie. I believe you was from your neighborhood, was he the first generation to start it? He was one of the first individual of the first generation. Yeah, you know. But me and my father, we didn't have a good relationship. We didn't have a relationship at all. As a matter of fact, I didn't meet him until I had already been from the hood, and I was already like in my like mid-teens, right? Like I knew everyone from his side of the family that's from my neighborhood, like his brother. I knew his brother and his cousins because they're all from the hood too. I knew them before I met him, right? Like obviously they're the homies, right? So I would go hang out. We would all hang out together, right? Um, but I tended to avoid him. Like I just wasn't, I wasn't eager to meet him. Let's just say that, right? I felt some type of way. You know what I mean? And he had with the whole fallout with my mom, him and my uncles felt some type of way as well, right? And they're from the hood too, right? Which is my mom's brothers. So he tended to hang out with a different crowd. You know what I mean? There wasn't like no beef, but it was just to avoid the tension, I guess you could say. What's good, Farmero? Music is based on personal facts. Would that be the late 70s or early? It'll be around the late 70s. So it was him and my mom, obviously, and my oldest uncle were like some of the of the first generation. You know, then like my other uncles, which are my mom's younger brothers, were the following generation. Then it was my cousins who were the generation following that. Then it was me. Then now it's my younger cousins. Yes, because I have like 12 family members from the neighborhood. Probably like 6 from like my dad's side because it's my dad, his brother, his 3 cousins, and I think that's it from his side. And then my mom, and then her 3 brothers, my aunt, so that's 4, and then my 3 cousins. So yeah, it's like about 12. So yeah, it's like about 12 of us. In total. That's why when people be like, "Why you still hang out with your neighborhood, bro? Why don't you grow up?" Like, what are you talking about, bro? They're my family. What do you expect? You know what I mean? And since obviously they were a part of the first generation, all the homies would come to the house. So I grew up knowing them. They were like, like how people refer to people as their uncles, right? Because they're just like always at the house. Like you kind of see them as family, right? So I grew up knowing everybody. But like I said, I didn't have the best relationship with my parents. I didn't have a relationship at all with my father. I had a horrible relationship with my stepfather. And then, me and my father really didn't click at all, at all. But as for my uncles, I got nothing but love and respect for my uncles. If anything, they raised me. Did you check out any of the cricket games? There's a lot going on. Cricket is on 36 days of the year. No, I didn't get to scope any out. So you guys would probably be the 3rd generation. Yeah, yeah. What are you talking about? About my family, pues. You're the Shadow Low. What's good? What's good? What I miss? Shelly, my boy, Mr. Pasas de Felipe in the Casfados. Have you ever had family from rival neighborhoods like ATMS Heart? No. I did have my stepdad was from a rival neighborhood. He was from Pacoima, right? So, and we had a very, very strong rivalry with them, right? So, like I said, I had a very, you know, rocky relationship with my stepfather. It was not good. You know what I mean? Because I was at that stage, you know, young, and I didn't give a fuck, but you know what I mean. And he was more of the serious type, and he tried to, um, try to put his footing right, but so we just didn't click though. And I wasn't gonna let myself, so you can imagine what kind of problems that created. Because he was an asshole, but at the same time, I didn't make it easy on him either. You get me? So I'm not trying to put all the blame on him, right? Because um, some of the blame was on me, right? But it is what it is. Some of them even throw. Yeah, and like I said, like whenever we would have birthday parties, because my brothers and sisters are from him, from my stepdad, right? Um, so my dad and my mom, the only kid from them too was me, right? Then now I have, my sister and my four brothers from my mom and my stepdad, right? So obviously when they would have birthday parties, he would invite his homies, and my mom obviously and my uncles, they would invite the homies. So there was tensions. You can feel the tension. You could feel the tension, right? But obviously everyone respected the household, right? Because we all lived under the same household. My mom, my uncles, and my stepdad, right? So we had a respect. They had, everyone respected the household, right? But you can definitely feel the the disconnection, right? And some of his homies ended up being some pretty cool individuals. I'm not gonna lie. Um, how it normally would work, like, because I've been jumped by his neighborhood, right? But it's individuals that like normally wouldn't go to the house, right? Like more the younger generation, right? We would do the same to their homies. Um, Now, if we would catch like one of his homies slipping that we know comes to the house, we would give him a pass if he wasn't doing like anything like he's not supposed to. Like, let's say if we catch him in our hood tagging, oh no, then it was gonna be on and cracking, right? But let's say if we had the Swami and we bump into each other, it was we wouldn't, you know what I mean? We would give that respect, But like, let's say a homie of his from his neighborhood, but we didn't know, no pass. It was on and cracking, and that's just the way it worked. Now, I did have homies whose brothers were from like rival neighborhoods, like 18 and all that, and it worked. It pretty much worked the same. It's kind of like when you're busted and you're sold up with one of your enemies. It's kind of like one of those things, type of thing, right? Like people always say, oh, these you have to get along and stuff like. First of all, you don't have to get along, right? And just because like, oh, you guys be killing each other, but then when you guys are arrested, you guys be singing kumbaya, and it's like, well, that's not how it works. Like, just because you're cool with somebody from that neighborhood, because like, let's say you're busted with them, right? That doesn't mean that now when you get out and you get caught sleeping by his homies, that they're gonna give you a pass. You're most likely gonna get your ass tore up. You know what I mean? And vice versa, right? If we see their homies, it's on and cracking, right? Like, just because this individual, we're cool with this one individual, that doesn't mean that their homies now get a pass. That's not how it works. It's become second nature. A lot of my older homies were my uncles. Yeah. Also, why is it that whenever you tell someone that you don't care about the life and how many women they sleep with, tell you that because you're gay? Because they're trying to defend their like their opinion. They're trying to defend them telling you this, right? They're trying to create some type of like excuse of why it's cool to do this, or why they're doing it, because they don't want to feel stupid, pretty much. Do you still have a relationship with your father or stepfather? No. um my father's in our relationship is like whatever, right? I really haven't spoken to him, right? Like, I'll speak to him every once in a while. With my stepfather, no, we never had a good relationship at all, right? And he's doing life anyway, so I careless. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just for my current wife. I have one with another woman, whatever, right? But um, it happens. Stuff happens. I was young and dumb. I made a lot of bad decisions when I was young. We when you're coming up like this, you're not thinking about the future. You're not really thinking about the future, growing up and getting a job and stuff like that. You're not even thinking about nothing, right? You're just living in the moment. We don't even know if we're even gonna make it to like that age. You know what I'm saying? So we weren't thinking about that. You know, they were just like, well, if we survive, right? But most individuals, are just living in the moment and really feel like they probably won't even make it to that, age. And that's just the cold reality of things. Like I'm saying, individuals really don't give a fuck if they, live or die. There's the mentality of these individuals. What year were you growing up? No, well, I grew up in the '90s because obviously I'm from the '80s. You know, born in the '80s, so I was running around in the '90s. Have you met Sleepy Malo? Yes, actually, he was one of my stepdad's homies from his neighborhood. He's been to the house and everything. Um, he was cool. Met him like 3 times. It wasn't like a conversation or anything. It was pretty much like, introduce and then that's pretty much it. I really wasn't trying to associate myself with him. Being from my neighborhood, just seeing somebody from their neighborhood that's not somebody that's like, even if they are a rapper, like, oh damn, what's up? You know what I mean? Because we weren't bumping their music. We wouldn't bump Southline because obviously they always mention their neighborhood, right? And well, homies ain't gonna be bumping that. Even if they are from the 818, right? But just always saying their neighborhood, and when we're gangbanging against them, we ain't trying to hear that shit, right? So it's not because like we weren't supporting their music because they sucked. It was more because of where they were from. You know. Now we're able to like hear it and judge it and stuff like that, right? But when we were younger, no, hell no. We thought different. You know what I mean? It was we were coming with a lot of that energy. Because when you're young, and just not giving a fuck, you're putting your neighborhood above anybody else's. Like, it's you guys are the best and the craziest and the downest and the ruthless and and all of that. That's why all these individuals think the same and will say the same thing about their neighborhoods and say the same thing about their ops. Not because it's true, but just because of it's a whole lot of emotions. There's nothing new one. Not to mention they use clothes, hitting and Russian power is not a concern. Like the chemical weather you're talking about? Like as in no. But see what they're talking about is controlling weather though. That was my point, that I was making that, for example, Taylor Green, Republican, well, conservative, right? Republican, conservative, whatever, right? She was saying that how the Democrats control the weather, right? And that they created hurricanes and that they created these hurricanes and that they're destroying and tornadoes and that they're destroying areas in all the red states is what she was saying. And I was like, yeah, well, she's full of shit though. You know what I mean? Like it's different from saying that you can make it rain right here compared to like you're saying that they're controlling tornadoes and hurricanes and shit like that. It's kind of like one of those things. Like for example, like when the guy Snowden when he released all all the information that he knows about the CIA and the NSA and everything like that, right? So because all that stuff ended up being true, people were saying that, okay, see, since that's true, everything else is true, and that's not how conspiracies work. Like, just because you were right about one, that's actually plausible, right? I mean, that one, like, there's a difference from the conspiracy of saying the government is listening to our conversations and spying on us through technology, because that's plausible, right? Them wanting to know this information for whatever means, they want to know this information. It's actually plausible. Compare that to the conspiracy that they're working with reptilians to kill kids, to drink their blood so they can stay young. There's a big ass difference in the two, right? Like, okay, well, this is actually plausible. This right here, you're probably, you need to lay off the mushrooms. You get what I'm saying? Like, just because one is true doesn't mean that now these are true. Like, that's not how it works, especially when we're talking about a leap in, possibility right here. Like, yeah, I could see somebody want to spy on you and shit like that, right? Compared to, working with shapeshifters and shit like that. Like, that to me, those are the conspiracies. Like, that to me is a conspiracy. Like, shit that is just like not possible. Like, people with powers and shape shifting and devices that can control weathers and fucking all the outlandish things, right? That is just like, yeah, I'm not buying it. And what's even more crazier, right? Like, the conspiracy, like the conspiracy theories that people give them, right? They give them these, these complex, conspiracies, right? These great plans, right? They make them intelligent, right? Example, the Illuminati. The Illuminati has existed for so long. They have been able to keep their secrecy, and they've been able to move underneath the radar, right? And they're controlling the governments and stuff like that, right? So they're intelligent enough to stay hidden and run the world together, right? But at the same time, they're stupid by doing hand signals in public and leaving symbols everywhere, right? Like on the money, on the airports, like I'm telling you, like, they make them sophisticated and intelligent, and at the same time they make them stupid and having them doing stupid shit. That just doesn't make any sense. Like, either they're really intelligent or they're fucking stupid, bro. But you can't play both, at the convenience. Like, yeah, they're gonna be intelligent enough to move like that, but then they're gonna be doing their secret handshake in public. Like, no, it's because they're trying to control the celebrities so they can control it. They give them, and then they give them the most stupidest plots, right? Like, that's what they're doing with their power. That's how they're gonna go about it. That way. Like, that has to be the most stupidest plan I have ever heard for a group that's sophisticated. I would figure that they would have came up with something better than that. You left the pad in your jeans, shut up. Yeah, I was never home. I was homeless for a cool minute, right? Staying at homies' pads. Just trying to avoid being, I didn't want to be at the house. There was a lot of chaos there. Back and forth. I think part is the fact that I'm telling you, but it's because they want that praise, though. They want that recognition. They want to be told how they're a player, a Mac Daddy, how they a real pimp, how they have, like, damn, my boy, you got game, my boy. Damn, all the females want this. I'm telling you, they want that praise. They crave it. It makes them, I don't know, maybe feel better about themselves. Maybe they got some insecurity issues. I have no idea. Right? But it has to be something, though, because like I said, people just don't do that shit for no reason. Right? So there's a meaning to it, right? And only they truly know what that is or why that is. Like, imagine the homies went around you. How many women? Have you ever had anyone like? Yes, I have a lot of people like that. And like I always tell them, oh, I don't care, bro. Ah, fool, don't be hating. I'm not, bro. I just don't really care. What is a crazy conspiracy theory you believe in? Mm, that I believe in? Mm, maybe I guess the one that I probably would that I believe that most people are like, nah, fool, you're tripping. Is the one that I don't feel like we're the only, you know, how can I say, like people in the universe, right? I feel like other planets, maybe not in our galaxy, but in other galaxies, right, have some form of life in them. You know, aliens, I guess you could call them, right? So I believe that Earth is not the only planet that has, living beings in it. Now, I don't believe that they come here and they kidnap people and they fucking, cut them up. I don't believe none of that shit. I don't believe in none of these people that said they got kidnapped and all that. None of that. But I believe that they, there's life out there, and that maybe they have probably visited our planet. I don't fucking know, right? But as to say that they be kidnapping people, no, I don't believe none of that, though. It just doesn't make any sense, though. Like you know, people, always say these crazy, stupid, stories of people getting kidnapped by aliens, right? And it just doesn't make any sense. Like, so you're telling me a sophisticated, intelligent, you know, a group of creatures or whatever the fuck, right? Because they have to be intelligent. In order to get from their galaxy to our planet, they have to be smart as fuck because they have technology that we can't even be able to fathom, you know? So these people are fucking leagues ahead of us in intelligence, right? In order to be able to pilot their ship and, come here and everything like that, right? So they're intelligent beings. And they're gonna come here and people make them these mindless monsters that want to eat us and shit like that. And it's like, I'm pretty sure they have food where they're coming from, right? I'm pretty sure they're not trying to eat you, right? And how could they be these mindless beings that they have to be able to pilot fucking technology that's even be like leagues ahead of our understanding, right? So they're gonna be smart as fuck, you know. And most likely, if they're coming here to this planet, right, is not with hostile intentions, right? Because why would they spend all that time on the trip and probably shit? I don't know how it works in their place, right? But and coming here and just to fucking do some stupid shit, right? Like that's only something that's dumb as somebody who's an earthling would think of, right? Even when they describe how these people look, right, they make them like human with human characteristics, right? Who's to say that they have to be human? Like, who's to say they have to have arms or mouths or teeth or whatever the fuck, right? We don't know how it works in their area, but that's probably the one. But when people always say about these, this one world governments or these fucking reptilians or shit like that. Now about the governments lying to us, I believe that 100. That's not even a conspiracy. Those are just the facts of things. Governments are gonna lie to their people. That's just the way it works, right? And governments have done a lot of scandalous stuff, tested fucking drugs on people without their knowledge, infecting them with diseases, right? Just to see, what the fuck. They had done a lot of scandalous, shady shit. But all of the shit that they have done is believable, though. It's not something that's like far fetched or like, oh, hell no, it's different if you're telling me that the government was secretly, testing, methamphetamines on their soldiers without their knowledge, compared to they invented this fucking thing where they're able to fucking shoot lightning out of their asses. When they're giving people powers, that's when you lose me in the conversation. I'm just like, yeah, no. Because it's like if they had powers, this game would be over, bro. There would be no reason for them to fucking. Same with the weather machine. If there was a weather machine, bro, this game is over, bro. There wouldn't have to be no reason for them to fucking negotiate with people or fucking, there to be votes or people to fucking approve of their this and that. They would just be like, either you guys fall in line, if not, we're gonna destroy your fucking city with this. And can nobody stop them? Can nobody, get in their way, right? Like the game is over, bro. What are you gonna do? They have a machine that can control the weather. What the fuck are you gonna do? Right? There's no reason for them to be fucking, consulting anybody, right? They would just, dominate the world and that's it. Point blank, period. There would be no reason for them to be doing all this other fucking stupid shit. You could have a normal conversation about politics and sports, and then other guy brings up how much money he has. Yeah, it randomly just goes like that. It's just like when they're trying to impress women. Ain't nobody bigger than the program. Facts. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions on senior citizens going back to college? I actually think that that's a good thing. Anytime you're educating yourself for whatever your reasons are, it's always going to be a good thing. Learning new things and just feeding yourself, knowledge is better than sitting around and not doing anything, right? Anytime, like I said, you're learning and just educating yourself, it can never be a bad thing, you know. I think it's more better than if that than somebody sitting around and just watching TV or not doing nothing. At least there, because like I said, the more knowledge you know, the more knowledge you feed yourself, the better you become as a person. Like I said, the mind is our greatest weapon in this planet. You should grow your hair and shave your beard. Nah, my wife wouldn't like that. Are you still from Radford? Yes, I'm still from Radford. Always. That's never gonna change. People can say what they want, but that's just who I am. He said Wendy Williams Bigfoot. No mames. Isn't it called harpies or something? Oh, you mean harp? Yeah, but people think that the thing is that when people don't know how something or what something is or how it works, they tend to. That's just the way humans are. It's our curiosity, right? We want to understand how stuff works and what's happening. People don't like to be in the unknown, right? In the dark. They want to know what's happening and shit like that. And sometimes when they're not able to understand, right, they create their own, you know, backgrounds and stories for how shit or why shit is working the way it works, right? Like it's why conspiracy theorists and theories are more easier for people to follow, right, and their community to grow more. Is right is if you try to explain how something works, right, using the math, the science, and the logic behind, right, with people that aren't really interested in that kind of stuff or educated, right? So then they start, going into the scientific talk and it's because of the ratio and the blah blah, right? People are just like, they're not really feeling it, right? Compared to like, I know what it is. It's aliens. Oh yeah, you're right. It's got what is there to understand? Nothing. It's aliens. It's Bigfoot. It's a reptilian. There's nothing to understand. It's as simple as that. Oh yeah. So now they don't feel dumb. Now they feel like they know what's happening, right? So now they're a part of a group that people agree with their ideas, right? So they don't feel insecure now about their, because they're not educated on the matters. It makes it, a lot easier for them to fucking believe it and to run with that compared to trying to explain how stuff works and the whole science shit behind it, right? People ain't trying to hear that, right? So this is more easier for them to fucking eat up, and that's how it's always worked, right? Like before, like example, schizophrenia is not a new disease, right? It has always existed. You already know when somebody's schizophrenic, how they talk to themselves, how they, get super strength, and how they're able to even change their voices and shit like that. So somebody who's schizophrenic, right? So imagine now living back in the days. Woo, back then, when people didn't have the knowledge, the research, or even know, nothing about this, right? So now they're seeing somebody talking to themselves and changing their voices and saying how they're the monster or the devil, right? So these people don't understand why these people are like that. It's a demon. He's possessed. What is there to understand? What is there to figure out? Nothing. It's a demon. It's as simple as that. They need an exorcism. It's the devil. You know, compared to now doing the research, the science, getting to the bottom of shit, you know, doing tests. And now, in our time, we understand what it is. It's schizophrenic. They're schizophrenic. There's even now treatments for it. Not fully, right? But like I said, it's a process, right? But we have came a long way of understanding what stuff is now. Or like, let's say you're at the at home and the door closes by itself. You know that how wind travels and you know how all that shit works. But compared to now living back in those times, they didn't know what none of that shit was, right? So then the doors close by themselves. What is it? It's a ghost. Of course. What else can it be? Right? Remember, education back then was a luxury. You know, people, you know, didn't have the means of education, right? You had to be people who were rich or somebody of status in order to even get education. So before, people didn't have, you know, any means of being educated. So of course, it was so easy for them to believe demons and ghosts and all this other crap, right? Because what else can it be? They needed to know and try to figure it out. This gave them at least an answer. And, you know, according to their education, it's believable. Right? But overall, hey, I gotta get back to it. It was good chopping it up with you guys, and we out.